Which one of you is her support person? The question stopped everyone in the maternity hallway. Julia stood outside the delivery room in a Philadelphia hospital, one hand gripping the side of a wheelchair while the other held her swollen belly. A sharp contraction stole her breath, forcing her to close her eyes. I need a second, she whispered through clenched teeth. A nurse gently rested a hand on her shoulder. You're doing well. Just breathe. Another contraction came almost immediately. The nurse looked around with growing concern. Where's the baby's father? Julia opened her mouth, but no words came. Before she could answer, hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway. Aaron? A tall man in an expensive suit rushed toward them, breathing heavily as though he had run farther than anyone expected. His face showed fear for the first time in years. Julia! He stopped only a few feet away. Before anyone could speak again, another voice came from the opposite end of the hallway. Julia, I brought your hospital bag. Jerry hurried over, carrying the overnight bag with one hand and a folded blanket with the other. His shirt was damp from the rain outside, but he barely noticed. His eyes stayed on Julia, making sure she was all right. The nurse looked from Aaron to Jerry, then back to Julia. Silence settled over the hallway. Neither man moved closer. Neither man spoke. Another contraction made Julia bend forward. Jerry instinctively stepped forward. Aaron did the same. Both men reached her at exactly the same moment. The nurse looked completely confused. I'm sorry, she said carefully, but only one person can go inside with her. Her eyes moved between the two men. So? She paused. Which one of you is her support person? Neither Aaron nor Jerry answered. Julia slowly lifted her head. She looked at Aaron, then she looked at Jerry. The answer resting in her heart would change all three of their lives forever. Before we continue, may God bless every home represented here today. May He give strength to those carrying heavy burdens, comfort to those facing difficult seasons, wisdom for every important decision, and hope for anyone waiting for brighter days. May your family be surrounded by love, peace, good health, and unexpected blessings. Amen. Welcome to Love, Money, and Secret, where America's greatest stories and life lessons meet creativity and heart. If you're new to the family, we're grateful to have you here. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It helps us bring more unforgettable stories your way. Also, tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because we'd love to know which city, state, or country is enjoying today's story. If you believe families should never be abandoned when they need love the most, take a second to like this video. Your support helps YouTube recommend these stories to more people who enjoy meaningful storytelling. Julia's breathing slowed just enough for her to speak. She looked at the nurse, but her eyes drifted back to the two men standing only a step away from her. One had once promised to stand beside her for the rest of her life. The other had simply kept showing up when life became difficult. Neither man said a word. Aaron finally broke the silence. I should be with my wife. Jerry didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he looked at Julia. This isn't my decision, he said calmly. It's hers. Those few words carried more respect than anyone expected. The nurse glanced at Julia again. Ma'am, we have to move. The baby isn't waiting. Julia took a slow breath, but another contraction tightened across her stomach. She winced. Jerry immediately crouched beside her wheelchair. Look at me, he said gently. Just breathe. You've done this every minute of this pregnancy. You can do this one too. Aaron watched from the other side. For the first time, he realized someone else knew how to comfort the woman he had once promised to protect. That truth hurt more than any accusation ever could. Julia managed a faint smile before another wave of pain stole it away. The nurse called toward the delivery room. We're ready! Another nurse pushed the doors open. Last chance, she said. Who's coming in with her? Julia looked down at her wedding ring. She slowly turned it with her thumb. The hallway became so quiet that even the wheels of another hospital cart sounded loud in the distance. Aaron swallowed hard. Julia, his voice shook. I know I don't deserve another chance. Jerry remained silent. He wasn't there to compete. He wasn't there to win. He was there because Julia had needed someone, and leaving had never crossed his mind. Julia closed her eyes for one brief moment. The decision she was about to make wasn't only about the delivery room. It was about every lonely night, every missed appointment, every broken promise, every small act of kindness, every person who chose to stay, and every person who chose to leave. Just before Julia answered, let's go back to where this painful journey truly began. But before we do, if you've ever seen someone discover the value of family only after pushing it away, leave A in the comments. Stories like this remind us that love isn't measured by expensive gifts or impressive titles. It's measured by who remains beside you when life becomes difficult. 3 months earlier, Aaron believed walking away from his pregnant wife would finally give him the peace he had been searching for. He had no idea that every step away from Julia was quietly creating space for another man to become the support she deserved. Cold rain tapped against the tall windows of Aaron and Julia's mansion in Philadelphia. Inside, the silence felt heavier than the weather outside. Julia stood at the end of the marble hallway with one hand resting on her growing belly. She had been waiting for Aaron to come home all afternoon because they were supposed to attend a prenatal appointment together. Instead, she watched him place a few neatly folded shirts into a travel bag. He didn't look angry. He didn't look emotional. He looked like a businessman preparing for another trip. Julia searched his face, hoping to find even the smallest sign that he would stop. Aaron. He zipped the bag without looking up. We'll only be gone for an hour, she said softly. The doctor said today is important. Aaron finally looked at her. I won't be going. Julia frowned. What do you mean? I canceled. You canceled our baby's appointment? Our appointment, Aaron corrected quietly. And yes. Julia stared at him. For a moment, she thought he was joking. He wasn't. She took a slow step toward him. You've missed the last appointment, too. I know. You promised that wouldn't happen again. I know. She waited for an explanation. None came. Instead, Aaron reached for his coat hanging beside the front door. Julia's voice trembled. Where are you going? He slipped one arm into the sleeve before answering. I need some time away. Away from work? He shook his head. Away from everything. Julia felt her heart sink. Everything includes me? Aaron didn't answer immediately. His silence became the answer she never wanted to hear. She blinked several times, refusing to let tears speak before she did. So that's it? Aaron lowered his eyes. I need peace, Julia. Those 4 words landed harder than a shout ever could. Because while Aaron was searching for peace, Julia was carrying the weight of sleepless nights, aching muscles, endless worry, and the tiny life growing inside her. She looked down at her wedding ring before lifting her eyes back to him. Aaron. Her voice was steady now. If you walk out that door tonight. She paused. Our lives will never be the same again. And standing there with his hand on the doorknob, Aaron made the decision that would change not only his future, but the future of everyone waiting for the child Julia carried. Aaron kept his hand on the doorknob for a long moment. The house was silent. Julia hoped he would turn around. She hoped he would remember the tiny heartbeat they had heard. Together only weeks earlier. She hoped he would remember the nursery they had planned. She hoped he would remember that she wasn't asking him to solve every problem. She simply wanted him beside her. Instead, Aaron slowly opened the front door. Cool air rushed into the hallway. Without looking back, he said quietly, I'm sorry. Julia swallowed the lump in her throat. No, Aaron. He paused. She continued, You're only sorry because you're leaving. One day you'll be sorry because you left. For just a second he stood still, then he walked outside. The front door closed. A few moments later, the sound of his car faded into the distance. Julia remained exactly where she was. She didn't run after him. She didn't call his name. She didn't beg him to come back. Her eyes filled with tears, but she stood tall. Just then a gentle kick came from inside her belly. She placed both hands over it and managed a small smile through her tears. Oh, so you have something to say too? Another tiny kick answered her. Julia gave a soft laugh. I know. Your father has completely lost his mind. She wiped her cheeks and looked down lovingly. But don't worry, you still have me. At that very moment, she made a promise, not only to her unborn child, but to herself. No matter how difficult the coming days became, she would never allow someone else's decision to define the mother she was becoming. Meanwhile, Aaron drove through the streets of Philadelphia believing he had finally escaped responsibility. He expected Julia to call. He expected her to cry. He expected her to ask him to come home. She did none of those things. Because while Aaron believed he was leaving behind a chapter of his life, he had unknowingly opened the door for someone else to step into the place he had abandoned. And before long, another man would quietly show Julia that love isn't proven by promises. It's proven by showing up when someone needs you most. Aaron's hand remained on the doorknob, but Julia could already feel the marriage slipping away. The rain outside tapped hard against the tall windows of their Philadelphia mansion. The house was beautiful, expensive, and cold in a way money could never fix. Marble floors, high ceilings, art on the walls Aaron had bought from people who praised his taste but never knew his heart. Julia stood barefoot in the hallway, one hand resting on her belly. Aaron, she said, keeping her voice low, look at me before you leave. He turned slowly, his coat already buttoned, his travel bag in his hand. I don't want another argument, he said. This is not an argument. This is your wife asking why you canceled our appointment and packed a bag like we are some business problem you can walk away from. Aaron's jaw tightened. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Julia stared at him. The pressure? I am carrying your child. I know that. No, she said, shaking her head. You know it the way you know a meeting is on your calendar. You don't feel it. You don't wake up at 3 in the morning wondering if the baby is okay. You don't sit alone reading doctor notes because your husband is at another private dinner. Aaron looked away. Julia had known his world before she married him. She knew the expensive restaurants near Rittenhouse Square, the charity events, the quiet clubs where men in tailored suits spoke more about power than family. Aaron was admired in those rooms. People listened when he spoke. Doors opened before he touched them. But at home, the man everyone respected had become the man Julia could barely reach. I built everything I have by staying focused, Aaron said. I can't live with constant emotion. Julia gave a small, painful laugh. Constant emotion? Aaron, my family talks. We check on each other. We pray when things are hard. We cook when someone is hurting. That is not weakness. That is love. I'm not from that world. I never asked you to be from it. I asked you to care. He said nothing. Julia stepped closer. When my aunties call, you roll your eyes. When my cousins visit, you hide in your office. When church friends send food, you act like. Kindness is noise. Aaron's face hardened. I need peace, Julia. She looked at him for a long second. Peace from your pregnant wife? His silence answered again. Julia's eyes filled, but she did not move toward him. She would not hold his coat. She would not block the door. She would not beg a grown man to love the family he helped create. Aaron opened the door. Cold air rushed into the hallway. I'll call you when I'm ready, he said. Julia lifted her chin. No, you'll call when pride gets lonely. That made him pause. For a moment she thought the truth had reached him. It had not. Aaron walked out. The door closed behind him. Julia stood still until the sound of his car faded away. Only then did her shoulders drop. A tear slipped down her cheek. Just as she wiped it, the baby kicked. Julia placed both hands on her belly. Oh, you felt that too? Another small movement answered her. She breathed out a weak laugh. Well, your father has lost his mind, but don't worry. Your mother still has hers. She looked at the closed door one final time. Her phone sat on the table nearby. She did not pick it up. That night, Julia made her first decision as a mother. She would not chase Aaron. By morning, Julia understood that staying in Aaron's mansion would only make the silence louder. She moved slowly through the bedroom, folding what she needed into a small overnight bag. Comfortable clothes, her prenatal vitamins, a pair of flat shoes, the baby notebook she had started when she first heard the heartbeat. She left most things behind. The mansion had plenty of space, but none of it felt like shelter anymore. Before leaving, Julia stood near the nursery door. The room was unfinished. A crib still waited in pieces against the wall because Aaron had promised they would build it together. She touched the doorknob but did not go inside. Not today, she whispered. Outside, the driver Aaron usually arranged was not waiting, and Julia was grateful. She did not want another person connected to his world asking questions. She called a ride, stepped into the back seat, and gave the address to the neighborhood where love did not require an appointment. When Julia arrived, she had barely reached the front steps before someone noticed her tired face. You all right, baby? Julia tried to smile. I'm fine. The woman looked at her swollen eyes, her slow walk, and the way one hand stayed on her belly. No, you are not. Come inside. Julia did not argue. Within minutes, the small home filled with quiet movement. Nobody demanded the full story. Nobody crowded her with judgment. One person warmed soup. Another brought cornbread wrapped in foil. Someone placed a glass of water near her and said, Drink. The baby needs you strong. Julia sat at the kitchen table, blinking back tears. I didn't come here to make everybody worry. A woman near the stove answered, Family worries. That is part of the job. For the first time since Aaron left, Julia's face softened. By afternoon, word had spread in the gentle way news moved through people who cared. A church friend stopped by with fruit. A neighbor brought rice and baked chicken. Someone else arrived with baby blankets, saying, I bought these last month. Don't argue with me. Julia almost laughed. You all act like I'm helpless. No, the woman said, placing the blankets on the table. We act like you're loved. That sentence reached the place Julia had been trying to protect. She looked around the room. There was no marble floor, no expensive art, no quiet luxury, but there was food on the counter, prayer in the air, and people who saw her pain without making her explain every part of it. That evening, Julia sat near the window with a plate she had not asked for, but badly needed. Her phone remained beside her. Aaron had not called. She looked at the screen once, then turned it face down. She would not measure her worth by how long it took him to remember her. Across the city, Aaron sat alone in a private suite above a luxury hotel restaurant, staring at his untouched dinner. His phone lay beside his wine glass. He checked it once. Nothing. He checked it again 10 minutes later. Still nothing. By the third time, irritation crossed his face. She'll call, he muttered. But the night stretched on. No missed call, no message, no tearful voicemail. Aaron leaned back, confused by the silence he thought he wanted. For the first time, the peace he had chased did not feel like freedom. It felt like being forgotten. And somewhere in the part of Philadelphia he had never truly respected. Julia was surrounded by the kind of love his money could not buy. 3 days after Julia returned to her old neighborhood, she tried to do something simple by herself. Groceries. It should have been easy. A few vegetables, bread, fruit, bottled water, and the crackers she had suddenly started craving at odd hours. But pregnancy had changed ordinary things. Her steps were slower now, her back ached faster. Even lifting a bag from the checkout counter felt like more work than she wanted to admit. Still, Julia refused to sit around waiting for everyone to treat her like glass. She walked out of the small Philadelphia market with 2 grocery bags hooked around one wrist and another pressed against her side. The afternoon air was cool, and the sidewalk was busy with people moving past storefronts, buses stopping at the curb, and neighbors calling greetings across the street. Julia adjusted one bag, but the handle slipped. A few oranges rolled across the sidewalk. "Oh, come on," she muttered. She bent carefully, one hand bracing her belly, but before she could reach the first orange, a man stepped forward and picked it up. Not too bold. He gathered the oranges and placed them back into the bag. "Let me get that," he said. Julia looked up quickly. He was calm, neat, and respectful in the way he stood, not too close, without acting like he had rescued her from anything. "Thank you," Julia said, reaching for the bag. "I can carry these to your car," he offered. "I don't have a car here. Then I can carry them wherever you're going." Julia's eyes narrowed slightly. "I can manage." The man gave a small nod. "I believe you." That answer surprised her. Most people argued when a pregnant woman said she could handle something. They rushed in, took over, made her feel weak without meaning to. But he did not. He simply held the bag out and added, "Managing doesn't mean you have to carry everything alone." Julia paused. Something about the sentence was too gentle to dismiss. "What's your name?" she asked. "Jerry." She studied him for another second. "I'm Julia." "I know," Jerry said, then quickly added, "I mean, I've seen you around." "People speak well of you." Julia almost smiled. "That depends on who you ask." Jerry chuckled softly. "Fair enough." She took one bag from him, but allowed him to carry the heavier one. They began walking slowly down the sidewalk. Jerry matched her pace without making it obvious. He did not ask about her husband. He did not ask why her eyes still looked tired. He did not ask why a pregnant woman was carrying groceries alone. That silence felt respectful. After a few steps, Julia said, "You always help strangers with fruit emergencies?" "Only when oranges try to escape." This time, Julia did smile. It was small, but real. When they reached the house, Jerry stopped at the bottom step and handed over the groceries. "I won't come up unless you ask," he said. Julia noticed that. Boundaries, respect, 2 things she had needed badly. "You can place that one by the door," she said. Jerry did as she asked, then stepped back. "No problem." Julia held the railing and looked at him. "Thank you, Jerry." "You're welcome, Julia." There was no flirting. No pressure, no promise, no dramatic speech, just kindness. But as Julia carried the lighter bag inside, she realized something had shifted. For the first time since Aaron walked away, help had come without control attached to it. And that made her remember how respect was supposed to feel. Jerry did not become part of Julia's life all at once. He became part of it in small, useful moments. The first time, it was groceries. The second time, it was a loose cabinet door in the kitchen that kept swinging open no matter how many times Julia pushed it shut. She stood there one morning, staring at it with a screwdriver in her hand, when Jerry passed by the front window carrying a small toolbox. Julia opened the door before pride could talk her out of it. "Do you know anything about cabinets?" Jerry looked at the screwdriver in her hand. "I know they shouldn't threaten pregnant women before breakfast." Julia laughed under her breath and stepped aside. 5 minutes, she said. Jerry lifted both hands. 5 minutes. He fixed the hinge in 4. He did not sit down. He did not linger. He simply packed his tool and said, "Call me if it starts misbehaving again." Julia shook her head. "It's a cabinet, Jerry. Some cabinets have attitude." That became the first easy joke between them. A week later, rain fell hard across Philadelphia on the morning of Julia's prenatal appointment. She stood near the window, watching water slide down the glass while holding her phone. The ride she had requested kept getting delayed. Her appointment was in 30 minutes. Jerry knocked lightly at the door. "I was passing by," he said. "You look like someone arguing with transportation." Julia sighed. "My ride keeps changing arrival time." "Hospital? Prenatal appointment?" Jerry nodded once. "I can drive you." Julia hesitated. He noticed and stepped back. "No pressure. I can wait outside while you confirm with someone, or you can say no." That was why she said yes. At the clinic, Jerry did not enter the exam room. He waited in the lobby with a paper cup of coffee and stood when Julia came out. "Everything good?" he asked. Julia's face softened. The baby is fine. Jerry smiled. That's the best news today. On the drive home, Julia suddenly said, I want sweet potato pie. Jerry glanced at her. All right. And pickles. His face became serious. At the same time, Julia looked out the window. Possibly. That sounds like a food crime. She turned to him sharply. Don't judge my baby's menu. Jerry raised one hand from the steering wheel. I respect the baby. I'm only worried about the pie. Julia laughed so hard she had to hold her belly. For a few seconds, the heaviness around her lifted. That laugh mattered. If you're watching and you've ever had someone show up for you during a difficult season, take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs encouragement. And tell us in the comments, do you believe love is proven more by words or by actions? By the following week, people had started noticing. A neighbor saw Jerry carrying a box of baby supplies. Someone else saw him walking Julia back from the market. Whispers traveled faster than truth. Julia heard one woman say, she's still married. Another voice answered, but where is the husband? Julia pretended not to hear, but the words followed her inside. That evening, Jerry stopped by to drop off a small bag of groceries Julia had forgotten at the market. She stood in the doorway and said, people are going to misunderstand this. Jerry nodded. They might. That doesn't bother you? It bothers me if it hurts you, he said, but helping you isn't wrong. Julia looked down. I don't want to be talked about. Jerry's voice stayed calm. Then I'll step back if you ask me to. She looked up quickly. He meant it. No guilt, no pressure, no wounded pride, just respect. Julia held the door a little wider. You can put the bag on the table. Jerry stepped in, placed it down, and moved back toward the door. That night, after he left, Julia sat quietly with one hand on her belly. She was still hurt, still uncertain, still legally tied to a man who had walked away, but something inside her had started to relax. Not because Jerry promised her anything, because around him she did not feel managed, judged, or forgotten. For the first time in months, Julia felt safe. For the first week after leaving Julia, Aaron told himself he had made the right decision. The mansion was quiet. No baby books on the coffee table, no reminders about doctor visits, no late-night conversations about names, diapers, delivery plans, or fear. No Julia asking him to come home early when his business dinners stretched too long. At first, Aaron called that peace. He moved through his days like a man who had removed one difficult thing from his life. He attended meetings in Center City, nodded through investor conversations, and sat at private tables where expensive meals arrived under silver covers. People still greeted him with respect. Men still shook his hand. Women still smiled politely at charity events. His name still carried weight in Philadelphia. But the more quiet he gained, the less peace he felt. One evening, Aaron returned to the mansion after a business dinner near Rittenhouse Square. He stepped into the hallway and stopped. No sound came from upstairs. No soft music from the kitchen. No voice calling his name. No Julia. He loosened his tie and walked toward the dining room, where a meal had been prepared for one. He stared at it for a long moment, then pushed the plate away. Later that week, Aaron sat in the back of his car after another meeting. Jerry walked beside Julia, holding an umbrella over her head while his own shoulder got wet. He was not touching her. He was not leaning, too. The house was too large for one man pretending he was fine. His driver had taken a route through Julia's old neighborhood because traffic was heavy near the main road. Aaron looked out the window without interest at first. Then he saw her, Julia. She was walking slowly along the sidewalk outside a small clinic, one hand resting on her belly. Rain fell lightly around her, and she moved with the careful steps of someone trying not to slip. Aaron leaned forward. Slow down, he said. The car eased near the curb. That was when Aaron saw Jerry, close. He was not acting like a man trying to claim attention. He was simply making sure the rain did not reach her. Julia said something Aaron could not hear. Jerry answered. Julia laughed. It was not loud, it was not dramatic, but it was real. Aaron's chest tightened. He had not heard that laugh in weeks, maybe months. He watched Jerry adjust the umbrella so Julia had more cover. When they reached the curb, Jerry stepped slightly ahead, checked the street, and waited for Julia to cross safely. Aaron gripped the edge of the seat. That should have been him. He should have been the one walking slowly beside her. He should have been the one holding the umbrella. He should have known about the appointment. He should have been the one making her laugh after a hard morning. Instead, he was watching from inside a car like a stranger. Julia paused near the corner, one hand on her belly, smiling faintly as Jerry said something again. Aaron looked down at his own hands. Those hands had signed contracts worth millions. They had held wine glasses in private rooms. They had accepted awards, opened doors, and commanded attention. But when Julia needed tenderness, those same hands had packed a bag and left. Sir? The driver asked carefully. Should I keep going? Aaron did not answer. He kept staring through the window as Julia and Jerry moved farther down the sidewalk. For the first time, Aaron understood the consequence of the space he had created. Another man had stepped into it. Not by force, not with disrespect, but with patience. Aaron opened his mouth, but no words came. The car remained parked near the curb. He knew he should tell the driver to move. He could not, because the woman he had left behind looked safer beside another man than she had looked beside him in a long time. Aaron barely remembered the drive back to the mansion. The image stayed with him all evening. It wasn't Jerry. It wasn't even the umbrella. It was Julia's smile. He had spent months convincing himself that distance would make life easier for both of them. Now he realized something painful. Julia wasn't falling apart without him. She was slowly learning how to stand again. That realization followed Aaron everywhere. During meetings, he found himself staring through conference room windows instead of listening to presentations. At dinner, he pushed expensive food around his plate before asking for the bill without finishing a single course. Even the mansion had changed. Every room reminded him of someone who was no longer there. One morning, Julia stepped outside to water the flowers growing beside the porch. She had barely finished when two women walking past slowed their pace. Neither woman stopped. Neither woman spoke directly to her, but they spoke loudly enough to be heard. "That's the young woman people have been talking about. The one whose husband left? I heard another man is always helping her." Julia lowered the watering can and kept her eyes on the flowers. She refused to respond. After they disappeared around the corner, she quietly finished watering the plants and went inside. Late that afternoon, Jerry arrived carrying a small box. "I found the baby monitor you ordered," he said. "The delivery company left it at the wrong address." Julia accepted the box with a grateful smile. "Thank you." Jerry noticed she seemed quieter than usual. "Everything okay?" Julia hesitated before answering. "People are talking." Jerry nodded. "I figured they would." She looked down at the box in her hands. "I don't want anyone thinking I've forgotten I'm still married." "You haven't." "I don't want anyone believing I'm replacing Aaron." Jerry's expression remained calm. "No one can replace another person." Julia looked at him. He continued carefully. "I didn't help you because I expected something in return. I know. And I won't do anything that disrespects your marriage." Those words surprised Julia. "You mean that?" "I do." Jerry stepped back slightly. "As long as you're married, my responsibility is simple." "What responsibility?" "To treat you with kindness. Nothing more, nothing less." Julia felt a lump rise in her throat. No promises, no pressure, no hidden expectations, only honesty. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Finally, Julia smiled gently. "I'm glad we met." "So am I." Jerry tipped his head politely before turning toward the sidewalk. "I'll see you tomorrow." As he walked away, Julia watched him until he disappeared around the corner. She rested one hand on her belly. The feeling growing inside her wasn't excitement. It wasn't romance. It was something quieter. Trust. That frightened her more than she expected. Across the city, Aaron stood inside the nursery he had never finished. The unopened crib still leaned against the wall exactly where he had left it. He walked over and rested a hand against the cardboard box. His reflection stared back from the nearby window. For the first time in many years, the successful billionaire looking back at him didn't seem successful at all. He had gained every luxury he once wanted, yet he had walked away from the one person who had asked for something money could never buy. His phone sat in his pocket. More than once he reached for it. Each time he stopped. What could he possibly say? Silence had already answered too many questions. Aaron took a long breath, picked up his keys from the hallway table, and walked toward the front door. This time, he wasn't driving to another business meeting. He wasn't attending another private dinner. He was finally going to face the woman he had left behind. Whether she opened the door was no longer his decision. Aaron stood outside Julia's door for nearly a full minute before he knocked. For the first time in years, money could not open the door for him. His name meant nothing here. His expensive coat, his polished shoes, his business reputation, none of it could protect him from what waited on the other side. Julia opened the door slowly. Her face changed when she saw him, but she did not step back to let him in. "Aaron?" He swallowed. "Julia?" She rested one hand on the side of the door and the other on her belly. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk. You could have called. I didn't know if you would answer." Julia looked at him steadily. "You learned something." Aaron lowered his eyes. "I made a mistake." Julia's expression did not soften. "No, Aaron, a mistake is forgetting milk. You abandoned your pregnant wife." The words hit him hard. He looked up, but she was not finished. "You canceled our appointment, packed a bag, walked out of our home, and left me standing there carrying your child like I was a burden you needed distance from." "I know. Do you?" Her voice stayed calm, which made it stronger. Because for weeks, I kept asking myself how a man could build companies, lead rooms full of powerful people, and still fail at standing beside one woman who needed him. Aaron had no answer. Julia opened the door wider, but not as an invitation of forgiveness. It was an invitation to hear the truth fully. He stepped inside. The home was modest compared to the mansion, but it felt alive. A folded baby blanket rested on the chair. A half-finished cup of tea sat on the table. A small stack of baby supplies leaned near the wall. Aaron noticed everything. Julia sat carefully. "You wanted peace," she said. "Did you find it?" Aaron stood near the doorway. "No, good." His eyes lifted. She continued, "Not because I want you suffering, but because sometimes discomfort is the only thing that teaches a person what love tried to teach gently." Aaron took a breath. "I saw you with him." Julia's eyes sharpened. "With Jerry?" Aaron nodded. "I saw him walking with you, holding an umbrella, helping you. He has been kind." Aaron's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to remain quiet. Julia noticed. "Do not come in here blaming Jerry for standing where you left empty space." Before Aaron could answer, a knock came at the door. Julia turned. "Come in." Jerry stepped inside carrying a small bag of baby items. "You left these by the market counter," he said. He stopped when he saw Aaron. The room went still. Aaron looked at Jerry. Jerry looked back, calm but cautious. Julia closed her eyes for 1 second and breathed out, "I am too pregnant for rich man drama and quiet man drama at the same time." Jerry pressed his lips together to hide a smile. Aaron looked down, almost ashamed that the sentence was true. Julia pointed gently toward the table. "Jerry, put the bag there." Jerry did. "Aaron," she said, turning back to him, "Jerry stepped in when you stepped out. That does not make him the problem. It makes him the witness." Aaron's face changed. For once, he could not hide behind pride. Jerry spoke quietly. "I'm not here to take anything from you." Aaron looked at him. Jerry continued, "But I won't apologize for helping her when she needed help." Julia looked between them. "That is enough." Both men fell silent. She stood slowly, her hand on her belly. "The justice here is simple. Aaron, you don't get to abandon me and still control how I survive. Jerry, you don't get to decide what my healing becomes either. I decide." Aaron nodded slowly. Jerry nodded too. For the first time since Aaron walked away, the truth stood in the room with no place to hide. And Julia was no longer the woman waiting to be chosen. She was the woman choosing what respect would look like from that day forward. Aaron did not leave Julia's neighborhood that day with forgiveness. He left with something harder: responsibility. The next morning, Julia received a message from him. "I will be at the next appointment if you allow it. I will not argue. I will not make excuses." Julia read it twice before replying. "Be on time." Aaron arrived 20 minutes early. When Julia stepped outside, he was standing beside his car, not checking emails, not speaking into a phone, not acting impatient. For once, he looked like a man who understood that showing up was not the same as being present. Jerry had also arrived, carrying a small folder Julia had forgotten the night before. When he saw Aaron waiting, Jerry stopped near the steps. Julia noticed the quiet choice in his face. "You can give it to me," she said. Jerry handed her the folder. "You good?" Julia nodded. "I'm good." Jerry looked at Aaron briefly, then back at Julia. "I'll head out." Aaron watched him walk away without comment. At the clinic, Aaron sat beside Julia in the waiting area. He did not try to hold her hand. He did not act like nothing had happened. When the doctor's assistant called Julia's name, Aaron stood and looked at her. "Do you want me to come in?" Julia studied him. "Yes, but listen more than you speak. I can do that." Inside the room, Aaron listened. He listened when Julia asked questions. He listened when the baby's growth was discussed. He listened when Julia explained the back pain, the tiredness, and the worry she had been carrying without him. When the baby's heartbeat filled the room, Aaron lowered his head. Julia saw his eyes shine. She did not comfort him. Not yet. After the appointment, Aaron drove her home and carried the heavier bag of supplies to the door. He placed it down and stepped back. "Do you need anything else?" Julia almost said no automatically. Instead, she answered honestly, "The crib is still in the mansion." Aaron nodded. "I'll have it brought here." "No," Julia said. He looked at her. "You will bring it yourself. Not your workers, not your assistant. You." Aaron accepted that. 2 days later, he arrived with the crib pieces in the back of his vehicle. Jerry was already there fixing a loose porch rail. The air tightened for a moment, but Jerry simply packed his tools. "I'll give you space," he said. Julia appreciated that more than he knew. Aaron spent that afternoon assembling the crib in the small room Julia had chosen for the baby. He struggled with the instructions, dropped screws twice, and finally admitted, "I should have done this months ago." Julia stood in the doorway. "Yes, you should have," he looked at her. I'm sorry. She crossed her arms gently over her belly. Sorry is only the beginning, I know. Over the next few weeks, Aaron kept showing up. He attended appointments. He answered when Julia called. He sent money for baby needs but stopped attaching instructions to it. He joined one Sunday meal in her neighborhood and sat quietly while people spoke honestly around him. Someone told him, money can fill a room, but it can't warm it. Aaron did not argue. He simply said, I'm learning. Jerry remained kind, but he stepped back whenever Aaron was present. He never competed. He never made Julia choose before she was ready. That patience made Julia respect him even more. Julia watched both men carefully. Aaron was changing through effort. Jerry had been steady from the beginning. One evening, after another appointment, Aaron walked Julia to her door. The sky was clear and the street was calm. He looked nervous. Julia, he said, I know I don't deserve to ask this. She waited. But is there still hope for us? Julia held the door open but did not answer right away. For the first time, Aaron understood that silence could be a consequence too. Julia never answered Aaron's question that night. Not because she wanted to punish him, because her heart was not ready to speak. She simply looked at him from the doorway and said, Aaron, right now, I need peace for the baby, not pressure for myself. Aaron nodded slowly. I understand. For once, he did not argue. 2 weeks later, everything changed before sunrise. Julia woke with sharp pain across her stomach. At first, she thought it was another false alarm, but when the pain returned stronger, she gripped the edge of the bed and whispered, No, not yet. The baby was still early. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. Aaron's number was on the screen, but before she could press it, another pain came. She called Jerry because he lived closest and had promised to help if anything urgent happened. He answered immediately. Julia, I think the baby is coming. His voice became steady at once. I'm on my way. Call the hospital. I'll be there in minutes. Jerry arrived quickly, helped her into his car, and drove through Philadelphia with calm focus. He did not panic. He did not ask useless questions. He kept saying, Breathe, Julia. We're close. At the hospital, nurses moved fast. Julia was placed in a wheelchair near the maternity wing, one hand gripping the side while the other pressed against her belly. A nurse asked, Where is the baby's father? Julia tried to answer, but another contraction stole her breath. Before she could speak, hurried footsteps came from the hallway. Aaron rushed in, his coat half open, fear clear on his face. Julia! He must have seen the missed calls from the hospital. He looked nothing. Like the polished billionaire who once controlled every room. He looked like a father terrified of being too late. At the same moment, Jerry came through the opposite side carrying Julia's hospital bag. I brought everything, he said, breathing hard. Your folder, the clothes, the blanket. Both men stopped near her. The nurse looked from Aaron to Jerry. Only one person can go in with her. Aaron swallowed. Jerry stepped back first. Aaron looked at him, surprised. Jerry's eyes stayed on Julia. This is your choice, Jerry said softly. Aaron turned to Julia. I'll respect whatever you decide. Julia closed her eyes for 1 second. The answer was not about pride. It was not about punishment. It was about what she needed in that room. She looked at Aaron. You can come in, she said, but not as my husband trying to fix everything, as the baby's father. Quiet, present, and respectful. Aaron's eyes filled. I can do that. Julia looked at Jerry. Please stay nearby. Jerry nodded. I'm not leaving the hospital. Inside the delivery room, Aaron did exactly what Julia asked. He stayed near her shoulder, held her hand only when she reached for him, and listened when the nurses guided her. When fear crossed Julia's face, Aaron whispered, You're doing well. She squeezed his hand. Not forgiveness, not reunion, just two parents meeting the hardest moment together. After hours of pain, prayer, and courage, the baby's first cry filled the room. Julia broke into tears. Aaron covered his mouth, overcome. The nurse placed the baby gently against Julia, and Aaron stared as if seeing life clearly for the first time. So small, he whispered. Julia looked down at the child. So loved, she said. Aaron lowered his head. In that moment, he finally understood. Fatherhood was not a title. It was presence. And he had almost missed the most beautiful beginning of his life. Several weeks after the baby was born, Julia's life began to settle into a new rhythm. There were sleepless nights, quiet feedings, folded blankets, soft cries, and mornings when Julia moved through the house with tired eyes, but a grateful heart. Motherhood was not easy, but it gave her a kind of strength she had never known before. Aaron visited often. He did not arrive like a man demanding space in a home he no longer controlled. He called first, he knocked, he waited, he brought diapers, formula, wipes, and anything Julia said the baby needed. If Julia said, not today, he accepted it. If she said, come by at 4, he came at 4. One afternoon, Aaron stood near the crib, watching the baby sleep. Julia stood beside him, calm but honest. "You are doing better," she said. Aaron looked at her. "That means more than you know." "I'm glad," Julia replied. "But doing better as a father does not erase what happened as a husband." Aaron nodded slowly. "I know." She turned toward him. "You asked me if there was still hope for us." His face grew quiet. Julia continued gently. "There is hope for peace. There is hope for respect. There is hope for us to raise this child with maturity. But my heart is not going back to the marriage the way it was." Aaron closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, there was pain there, but no anger. "I lost you," Julia answered softly. "You lost the version of me that kept waiting. That truth hurt him, but he accepted it." "I will not fight you," Aaron said. "I will be the father our child deserves," and this time, Julia believed he meant it. Aaron kept changing after that. He used his wealth differently, instead of only attending luxury charity dinners where people clapped for donations. He began quietly supporting struggling families in Philadelphia. He helped fund baby supplies, food programs, and safe housing support for mothers who had nowhere else to turn. He did not do it for applause. He did it because Julia's world had taught him what his world had ignored. Family was not performance. Love was service. Jerry remained close, but never rushed Julia. He checked on her. He brought tea the way she liked it. He carried groceries without making a speech about it. When the baby cried during a family meal, he warmed a bottle while Julia rested for 5 minutes. One evening, Julia watched him rocking the baby gently near the window. "You're good at that," she said. Jerry smiled. "I follow instructions well," Julia laughed softly. "You also pretend you're not nervous." "I am very nervous," he admitted. "This baby is tiny and powerful." Julia's laughter filled the room, warm and free. That was how love began between them. Not with pressure, not with stolen moments, not with disrespect. It began with patience, with trust, with someone staying consistent long after the difficult moment had passed. Over time, Julia allowed herself to feel without guilt. She and Aaron had made peace. Their marriage had ended in her heart, but their responsibility as parents remained. Aaron respected that boundary, and Jerry honored it too. Months later, Julia hosted a small family gathering in her neighborhood. Food covered the tables. Laughter moved through the rooms. The baby was passed from loving arms to loving arms, while Julia stood near the porch, watching everything with quiet joy. Jerry stood beside her, close enough to feel like home, but still gentle enough to let her breathe. Aaron arrived later with a bag of baby supplies and a warm dish. Someone had taught him how to prepare. It was not perfect, but everyone appreciated the effort. He looked at Julia and Jerry together. For a second, old regret crossed his face. Then he smiled respectfully. Julia noticed. That smile told her justice had finally settled where it belonged. Aaron had lost control but gained humility. Jerry had gained love but never by force. Julia had gained peace because she chose herself first. As the evening softened, Jerry looked at Julia. "Are you happy?" Julia looked at the baby, then at Aaron, speaking quietly with people he once would have avoided, then back at Jerry. "I am," Jerry smiled. "After everything?" She nodded. "Life didn't happen the way I planned. Is that a bad thing?" Julia leaned gently against him. "No," she said softly. "Sometimes the wrong person walking away makes room for the right person to step in." Jerry reached for her hand. This time Julia gave it freely. And for the first time in a long time, she was not waiting for someone to choose her. She had chosen herself. Love had found her there. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and tell us in the comments, do you believe love is proven more by promises or by actions? Don't forget to subscribe to Love, Money, and Secret for more powerful stories filled with life lessons, justice, and hope.